Welcome to Meaning Quest, a channel dedicated to the pursuit of meaning in the human life through understanding of the spiritual principles. Today we are beginning the Attention series, a series in which we will discuss the aspects related to attention and how can we expand it and how can we better understand it. So, are we really being attentive? Or are we really paying attention? Yes, it's true, this might sound paradoxical, but paradox is a characteristic of the society in these times. And I say these times because we must be aware of the uniqueness of the time period in which we live. I do not think that this should make us necessarily happy, not entirely, at least not for now. Or perhaps it should make us happy because it gives us the chance to improve ourselves like never before in history. But let's get into the subject. I know that your time is limited and especially your attention. So why is the attention span so diminished? Here we come to the first point of this approach. We are witnessing a constant and, at best, worrying increase in attention deficit, not only in the case of children, but of all age groups. Here is a study which can illustrate this situation. We will have the link in the description below. And also we have another graph which shows how much this condition has become a cash cow for the pharmaceutical companies. But I don't want to bore you with graphs and studies. The internet is full of them. All you have to do is search for them and study them yourself. If you, of course, have the patience and the attention to do so. What I want to emphasize is that in contrast to the last 1900 years, and even in contrast with a generation ago, 40 or 60 years ago, humanity is now in a profound change, and it's undergoing a profound modification in the communication paradigm. Everything is, we can say, on fast forward. But in contrast with the previous period, when there was only radio, television, and the classic telephone, now the internet has made the human being bathed, literally bathed if you think about the Wi-Fi networks, bathed in information and also in entertainment, in vast entertainment possibilities. Of course, we are grateful for the acceleration and the improvement in communication, in information, in scientific discoveries, etc., etc. Now the internet is on the move. We have it with us. We carry it on via our mobile phones. And what does this mean actually? It means immediately accessible news. It means friends and also distant connections that write to us all kinds of messages and send us all kinds of pictures and links and information, many useful and interesting and many totally useless. So what is happening now in a God-given day with our attention? It is fragmented in 1,000 directions, and in this way it cannot focus except on so-called routine actions or anything that we do on the move that also require a fragmented attention, flipping through social media, talking on the phone, etc. But did we ever stop to think about the fact that we as human beings require also other types of engagement or of development of our consciousness? We need to create, we need to introspect, we need to think at a deeper level, to pray, to contemplate. But how many of us make or have time for this kind of activities? Any creative process requires silence and uninterrupted attention. Also, an uninterrupted attention developed on a longer period of time. And so we get to the heart of the problem. As long as we are not aware of the dangers of this technological invasion, and especially how much of this invasion is especially targeted towards us, how much of it is aimed to distract us, so that being almost always immersed in our phones, we can no longer create anything of value and continue to submit to the system that regiments us in corporations, where we work ourselves to exhaustion just to live from one month to the next. Of course, we don't have to fall into the other extreme, dismissing communication altogether or disregarding the amount of work that is necessary in any profession or in achieving something of merit. We just have to be aware that without consciously allocating periods of silence in which we can focus our attention uninterruptedly, no authentic creative process can take place. And we have to evaluate for ourselves the importance of this action for our life in general. But this technology does not only generate a disturbance of attention, it interferes with human relational patterns and generates a form of contact that can only be described as a contact by proxy, by intermediary. We are in fact aware that a great number of people will rather send a text message instead of making a call or meeting in person. This is a trend that is increasingly manifesting now. And here are two problems that arise from this. Problems that remodel relationships according to completely new forms and norms. And again, not necessarily always the good ones. Due to the lack of attention in general, we can no longer really pay attention to other people. Have you noticed how quickly a friend gets bored of listening to you? We exclude here the cases of logorrhea or narcissism. Yes, beyond those. Or how quickly a person is interrupted in a conversation. We no longer have patience for others because we no longer have patience and attention for ourselves. We are no longer attentive to the fundamental needs of our being and of our souls. So even less can we be attentive to the needs of others. The second problem is the lack of direct communication that leads to this communication becoming superficial. Of course, it is more convenient to send an SMS or a text message or write quickly on WhatsApp. Probably you send 3 emojis and you're done and you feel involved emotionally. But in fact, you are not. This is a false attention because you cannot see that person. You cannot hear her voice. Well, you can call her via video, and this is different now. You cannot feel her mood in this text message exchange. So you can no longer interact with them, but you transmit something that creates a false momentary satisfaction that you have, and you have the impression of a human interaction without its real benefits. Surely it is better than no communicating at all. But anyway, we think everything in the short term without considering how this attitude affects us in the long term. Through the emotional frustration and alienation that gradually sets in at a psychological level. From a deeper spiritual point of view, this fragmentation and this alienation from the soul is reflected in the decrease of our capacity for introspection, for concentration, and for meditating. In the fortunate cases, of course, that where these methods are thought of applying or are even taken into consideration. Or much more seriously, we distance ourselves from spirituality altogether, from our soul, and we experience thus an acute lack of time for regenerative and deep communion with God. However, For every disease, there is a cure. For every negative aspect, there is also a positive counterweight. In this case, the internet itself, with its immense possibilities to facilitate communication and the dissemination of information, can contribute to increasing the degree of awareness, particularly from these dangers, and increasing and dispersing this awareness to large groups of people, thus generating the raising of our level of consciousness and the awakening that will produce in time what we can call a critical mass, necessary for the transition to a higher level of understanding and action for a significant part of humanity. This elevation of consciousness and the awakening of our awareness is in fact already happening. It has begun. All that remains is for each of us to contribute to accelerating this process. The only truly effective way to counteract these negative influences is to amplify the consciousness, the inner clarity, the determination in ourselves. Because only in this way will we be able to develop the discernment and the will necessary to break away from these thieves of our time and attention. And we will thus be able to focus on what really matters, our development as human beings, our inner growth, and the accomplishment of that mysterious calling that each of us can feel deep in our soul when we give ourselves the time and peace to reflect. Every being who becomes aware and realizes their potential contributes to the ascension of all humanity. So your effort is important and your own improvement matters every time. We will meet in the next video. Remember that a meaningful life will shine a light on everybody and on everything that surrounds it, but especially this light will be in your heart. May you all have a life full of meaning.